lives, and I'd like to welcome you to the first video that I am sharing in this new year. Happy New Year! We made it to 2021, and I am so excited to have you in this space here with me at this point in time. So like I'm sure many of you out there, at this time of the year, I start thinking about what it is that I would like to set as an intention, or intentions if I have more than one, for this coming year. So there are a couple. So the first and foremost is that I want to make a more concerted effort into producing content for the channel. Somewhere along the way last year, and we all know why, because we had an experience that affected each and every one of us in different ways last year. And so the way it affected me was I became very busy with work outside of my business doing readings. And so as a result of that, my video production kind of fell to the wayside. So I figured if it's going to happen, it's going to be because I'm making a more concerted effort on my part to produce content. So I figured there's no better day than the first day of the new year to do that. So that is one intention. The other intention is that I was led and guided by my new deck, my newest Oracle card deck, because over the last year I produced a number of them, but the last one, which is called Neophyte, and I've posted a walkthrough of the cards, and I actually even posted one reading that I did with the deck last year. But the cards told me in a reading that I did for myself regarding what I could do to work with the deck in 2021. And the response that I got from the cards that turned up is that this deck wants to have more of a presence in my reading life. And that's in my reading life when I'm reading for myself. But I'm also getting the sense that the work that I'm sharing on a public level, or in the public space, or in the public sphere, right? So I'm using this particular deck for this reading. Okay, so now there is an intention for the reading. This reading came as a request, so that's the other thing that I'm setting an intention on, is that I want to honor the request of viewers as they come in. So this request came from a viewer named Kelly. So Kelly, if you're watching this, hi, and this is in part for you. So Kelly asked me if I would be willing to do an Oracle Outlook, which is the video series that I was producing over the last 5 years, but again fell off the wagon, or got waylaid. So she asked if I would be willing to do an Oracle Outlook for the new year, and this was the specific question. She asked, what do we need to know of or be aware of as a collective as we move through this year 2021. So that is the intention for the reading. Okay, so honoring intentions, right? So first off, first video of the new year. Second, working with my deck because it wants to have more of a presence. And third, I'm honoring the request of a viewer. So now that I've set things up, let's get to the table and take a closer look at what my deck, Neophyte, wants to offer about the year ahead. And here we are with the cards on the table, and I'm going to take a few moments to shuffle the deck. And as I shuffle, I'm focusing on the intention, which was the question for this particular reading. And remember, this was answering the question for the collective about what to know or be aware of as we embark on the year 2021. So I'm feeling one more time will be good. Alright, and now I'm going to go ahead and cut the deck. Putting it back together. Fanning the cards out. And I'm looking for 5 cards in the fan that are getting my attention. Okay, so 2 came out at the same time, so I'm going to honor that, 1 and 2. They all seem to be on one side of the fan. 4, and I'm looking for the 5th and final card. Okay, and there's another one there, so we have actually 6. So what I'll do is I will read the 6th card as a continuation of the 5th card. Alright, so I'm going to put card 6 aside for now, so I can line the cards up in the order that they were pulled. So when I work with my Oracle deck, I have 2 ways of reading the cards. I could choose to read them in the way that I read Lenormand and Kipper, where the middle card represents a central issue, and then I read the outer cards to see how they inform us more about the central issue. But when I work with my Oracle cards, I tend to read them from left to right, and each one has a specific meaning based on its position. So I'm going to do maybe a little bit of both. So I'm going to start with the card on the left. And so this is the origin card. So this tells us a couple of things. Number one, what the situation or the experience is based on this card that it wants to share or talk about, or the reason for the question. So now remember, the question was, what do we need to either know or be aware of as a collective as we move through this year 2021? Okay, so the card is spilling over. Okay, so the first thing that I see here is the picture for me when I pull this card represents the past, because it's a framed moment in time. It's a snapshot, right? So the water coming out represents emotions or feelings or events from the past that are spilling over into the present, and that would be the living room, right? The living room symbolically represents the space that we are currently living in. So if you go with this based on the question, and the question is context, this would be living in the space of 2021, right? But we have energy from the past spilling over into the present, right? So for some of us, we might be needing to take a look at picture, right? That's something we have to look at. So we might have to take a look at our past, so our past as individuals, and the past as a collective, right? Because even though we're individuals, we are still having a collective experience. So maybe either individually or as a collective, what is spilling over from the past into this current year? And what are we willing to do to address it? The water, again, for me, could represent emotional issues, right? You know, as a psychologist, you know, because my background is in psychology, this is known as the spillover effect. That was my intention when I conceived the card. The idea that one area of our lives is spilling over into other areas of our lives. And so that could be a positive thing, but it can also be a challenging thing based on whatever that one aspect is that's spilling over, right? So I'm getting a sense that there are carryover issues from last year that we still need to deal with, that we are still living with, that haven't been resolved. So that's the first thing that I would say in terms of what we need to know and be aware of, right? How is that affecting us in the present moment, right? It could also be too, just from an individual standpoint, there are individuals in the collective, right? Because even though this is a collective reading, I would love for it to resonate with every single person who lands on this video and every single person who watches it. But in truth, it's going to speak more to certain people than others. So there may be certain people in the collective who are needing to deal with emotional issues from the past, and what are you willing to do to reframe the experience so you can move on from it. Okay, so that's what I'm seeing with spilling over. The next card usually talks about, you know, what our expectations are, right? So again, this could be a collective expectation or an individual expectation. So the card is, so this is Neophyte. So this is the card that is actually the namesake of the deck. So when I pull this card, for me, it represents embarking on a new experience, a new phase, a new chapter. I love how it follows up this, right? So if this is talking about, events from the past spilling over into the present and what we need to do to reframe those experiences or move beyond them, then this card is about our expectation is having a new phase, a new experience, wanting to move into the next stage or phase or chapter of life, meaning we want to get over this, right? And move into this. So that is what I would say the expectation is with Neophyte. So now, the Neophyte card can also be talking for some people about, be willing to not fit in. This card sometimes for me can represent, the need to fit in or trying to fit in, and if that's the case and if that resonates with you, and maybe that's part of the spillover effect, right? Remember, this is about emotional issues, right, that we are currently living with, and it may be for some people the issue is about trying to fit in, which means on some level there's an issue around acceptance, wanting to be accepted, needing to be accepted, and how can you allow yourself to be who you are and who you are trying to express yourself as, rather than trying to conform to the idea of who people want you to be. That may be the picture here. I'm being told to come back to this picture. The picture here might be the image that we are trying to convey to other people. And is it being accepted or rejected, right? And whether or not people accept you or reject you is not about you. It's about them and whatever their issues are that they are bringing to the table, right? But for some people, that might be an unresolved issue that is still present at this time, right? The other thing, the Neophyte card is also a spiritual card. So for some people, there may be a need or a desire or an impulse or a leading to move into something new regarding your spiritual growth and development, right? For me, the image is here, the energy behind the figure can represent angels. So, and I'm just saying that because I'm an angel person. So for some people, there may be a renewed, that's the word I'm being being inclined to say, excuse me, a renewed interest in angels and guides and things of that nature. So I'm just throwing that in there too. So as a result of this, there may be a renewed interest in spirit or spirituality and moving in that direction. So that is what I want to offer with the Neophyte card. I'm thinking that if I go back to what it means in the position of expectation, this is about like wanting a fresh start or a clean slate, that kind of thing. But the cards are kind of giving us that the reality is that there's going to be still residual things from the past that need to be looked at or reframed in order for us to get that fresh start, or clean slate. So it's just a matter of like, what are you hanging on to? What issues are unresolved in your life that you could decide, make the decision, and then make the declaration, and then take the action on resolving those issues so you could move on, right? Because if you don't, they're going to potentially spill over into the life that you're trying to create at this point in time. Okay, so that is Neophyte. So now the next card for me usually represents a hidden influence, but it can also be what's at the heart of the matter or what we need to focus on. And the card is, so here we have energy work. So when I created this card, I had in mind the idea of Reiki or healing modalities centering around energy work. So I said Reiki first because I'm a Reiki practitioner, and that is the modality that I have the most, I'm most familiar with it, right? But there are other things like quantum touch, healing touch, but all of that. So it would be, if I go with that as the chief meaning of the card, then it's about putting the energy into working out issues regarding healing and healing the past, right? So again, this is a nice connection to the spilling over card. What needs to be healed from the past, again, so we could move on. And this card would suggest, putting in the work or the effort into that. And it could also be, at the heart of the matter, if we're talking about this current year, what is the work that we want to put into this year? So again, that would be a way of asking yourself, what is the goal? What is it that I want to achieve? What is it that I want to accomplish? And would I be willing to put in the energy and the work into achieving that goal? Right? And so I'm looking at the card. And so sometimes for me, this card can sometimes be about uh, vision, because she's looking at this energy sphere and it looks like it could be a crystal ball, right? So it's about looking into the future, possibly. And so when we're talking about looking into the future, I tend to look at that as looking into the future in terms of potential and possibility, because my belief as a card reader, especially when we're looking at future oriented events or timelines, is that the future is not written in stone, right? When I do a reading, the reading is an energetic snapshot, picture frame on spilling over, an energetic snapshot of the moment in time, right? And so sometimes in those moments, we get an idea of where a possible timeline is going, or where an event is moving forward. But that's like a forecast, right? With that in mind, is that we all have the power of choice and free will. And so we can always, at any moment in time, with the power of a thought, alter our path or change our course, right? So I never suggest for any moment that the future is written in stone, right? So that's what I'm seeing here with this. As she's looking into that energetic sphere, as she's scrying, she's looking at a potential future. And the thing about that is, if you are sensing, or you are being informed of a future possibility and you do not like that as a possible outcome, you have the power to change that course, right? You're just being informed in the moment, and you get to decide what you're going to do with that information, right? But again, for me, the chief meaning of energy work represents putting the energy or the work and effort into healing. So it would be, as I'm talking about the word healing, I'm seeing the word recovery in my mind. So it's like, what do you need to, as an individual, what do you need to heal from? What do you need to recover from? And as a collective, we all collectively need to heal and recover, right? The past year has been a very challenging year, and I'm saying that, and I know that's an understatement for a lot of us, right? But it was a very challenging year. There was a lot of emotions expressed, right? The waterfall from spilling over, and that may be some of the energy that we need to take a look at and we need to heal from, right? So that's what I'm seeing with energy work, as the focus is like focusing our energy and putting the work and effort into whatever it is that we want this clean slate to be, because she's facing the Neophyte card, right? So that's how I would look at that. So now the next card is going to be about guidance or advice. And here's what I always offer to people who I give one-to-one readings on when it comes to guidance or advice. The cards never tell us what we need to do, what we should be doing, or what we ought to be doing. Because again, that's a way of robbing us of our power of choice and free will. The cards are offering us information, and we get to choose what we're going to do with it. We get to choose whether we're going to accept it or reject it, right? So I offer that. So when I say guidance or advice, it's the card's way of saying, would you be willing to consider this? So taking a look at the card, it's a whole new world. Okay, so when this card comes up for me, I immediately go to the zebra on the card. So the zebra is an animal. So animals represent symbolically our animal nature. Yes, because as human beings, we are still part of the animal kingdom. So our animal nature, right? And as a horse, it can talk about, progression, advancement, moving forward. If you stop and think about the expression horsepower, right? So the power to move forward, the power to progress, and how are we going to choose to do that? It's also a symbol, of spiritual healing, and so it's a nice reference back to energy work, right? So this idea about healing on an energetic level, a vibrational level, is being repeated, and I say vibrational level because of all the lines around the background of the card, you could look at those as vibrational frequencies, yeah? Okay, so, but the other thing about the zebra is that the zebra is black and white and has stripes. Okay, so there's two things about the stripes I want to say. First, the challenge. The challenge with anything being black and white, it talks about, the possibility of a black and white attitude, meaning seeing things as black and white. It's either right or wrong, good or bad. The black and white talks about extremes, right? And so maybe for some of us in the collective, it's about getting over this tendency to look at things in black and white terms, right? It may be a matter of, are there more shades of gray that we are not taking into consideration? If you go with the idea that things are extreme, then what about the things that fall in between the two extremes, right? What's in between the spectrum, or what's on the spectrum of those two extremes, right? And so a whole new world is getting us to think about that, and it could be too, like, if we want to create a whole new world, remember now, the world would be the collective aspect of the question that Kelly has brought to the table, right? So if we're taking a look at the world, so this could be about worldly things, things on a global scale, things of a universal nature. If I tend to expand that out into more spiritual terms, a more universal nature, what would that world look like, right? And it's a matter of, would that world work for everyone who inhabits that world, right? And so maybe the barrier to that would be the black and white attitudes that people are holding. When we talk about the collective has what I call a group consciousness. So what is in group consciousness, and that is more like black and white thinking, or in black and white terms, right? How do we get over that in the group consciousness or the social consciousness? What needs to change or be raised up or lifted up, right? So that we all can progress, not just some of us, but all of us, right? So that would be a whole new world. So that would be the challenging side of the black and white of the zebra. The more positive thing, stripes, for me, I also tend to think of earning your stripes, right? So it's about, how have the challenges of the past spilling over, how have the challenges of the past enabled you to earn stripes, right? So if you think about earning your stripes, that's being decorated, being awarded something, being rewarded something in military terms, right? So it's about, how have those experiences helped you? What were the lessons that you gained as a result of having had those particular experiences, right? If you go with the idea that the world, from a spiritual standpoint, is known as the Earth School, meaning we all come here to learn certain lessons as individuals and as a collective, right? So earning your stripes is a way of saying, what have you learned, right? You wouldn't have learned that lesson if you didn't have that experience, right? So what did we learn as individuals? What did we learn as a collective? And it's making me think that those experiences, and the takeaways from those experiences that we are going to be moving forward with, right? It's a form of making progress, and then we take what we learn and we put that into action moving forward. So that's what I'm seeing with a whole new world, right? So for me, it represents a new level of awareness, expanded awareness, possibly seeing the bigger picture. Now the horse is looking at the world, so having moments where you get to see the bigger picture, kind of thing, right? But in order to do that, it may be a matter of moving beyond black and white thinking or having a black and white attitude, that kind of thing. Okay, so that is the guidance or advice that I see in a whole new world. Okay, so now the last card is going to represent a potential outcome. So now remember, this is the first of two cards. So the card is, light at the end of the tunnel. Oh, I love that. Okay, so, based on the title of the card, there is a meaning of that, right? So it represents moving through a possible challenging period and getting to the other side of it, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. The light is symbolic of enlightenment, awareness. So we have that being repeated twice here, because in the background here, we have light behind the zebra standing on top of this world. And we also have the light of the energy that this figure is looking at, right? So it's a matter of seeing the light, becoming enlightened, um, becoming more aware, right? But in order to do that, sometimes we have to move through a dark period or a dark chapter in our lives in order to see that light, right? And then the tunnel is also symbolic of a transition. So we are transitioning, right? We're making a transition. And so it's a matter of maybe not getting stuck in the tunnel, right? You know, the light at the end of the tunnel could just represent the guiding light, the light that's going to help us move through a challenging or difficult experience, right? But for me, just generally speaking, the light at the end of the tunnel is an expression that represents, you know, getting to the other side of a difficult period or time, right? So that is light at the end of the tunnel. And so now let's take a look at the final card that I drew that came out with light at the end of the tunnel, and it is, ooh, okay. So here we have the shadow self. So the shadow self, and I love the fact that here we have light at the end of the tunnel, and then we have a card here talking about shadow. So there's a nice interplay here between the light and the shadow. So the first thing that I want to say about shadow self as a challenge card. So the shadow self can represent, you know, being an ego, you know, and so it's about, you know, taking a look at our ego, you know, taking a look at our shadow side, taking a look at our shadow aspects. So in order to see the light at the end of the tunnel, it may be a matter of seeing and recognizing our not so nice sides or not so nice qualities or not so nice aspects in order to heal and recover from them. And, you know, I'm thinking like there are certain aspects that may come up that may seem unpleasant, and they're coming up so we can face them, right? The mask that is the visual on the card goes over the face, right? So it's about an image identity. So it could be about like false images or identities. Now that's a nice way to come back to Neophyte, because now remember I talked about this idea about being accepted, right? Not trying to fit in. And here we have, like, if that's the case, then this may be a matter of dropping the mask, dropping the disguise, dropping the pretense, you know, no longer pretending, those kinds of things. I'm seeing that. And it could just be a matter of, too, taking a look at the roles that we are playing in life. And are those the roles that we want to continue playing, right? So I'm seeing that because I tend to think of the shadow self card as, you know, symbolic of actors and actresses, right? Because actors and actresses play roles, or they play parts, right? In the bigger stage production of life. If that's a metaphor, then we could say, what is the role as an individual that I want to portray or I want to play in the bigger stage production of life? And that would go back to the idea about the collective, right? We all play a role or a part in what's going on in the collective, whether we choose to believe it or not, right? And that would come back to the idea, shadow self. People might say, well, I have nothing to do with that. But if you are a part of the collective, from an energetic standpoint, we all play a role and we all play a part. So maybe it's about taking a look at what our energetic contributions are to the way things are and the way things could be, right? It may be a matter of shifting our role or our part or our energetic contributions, right? So it's making me feel like sometimes too, when I get this card, it talks about something being revealed, right? The mask being removed, and that there is going to be a bigger role or part that either an individual or the collective has to play, especially if we're talking about seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, right? In order to do that, it may be a matter of getting real and dropping any pretense or any falsehoods that we are holding on to, right? And then the bigger question becomes, would you be willing to engage in that work, right? Would you be willing to put the energy and the effort into that work, right? So again, it's making me feel like what the collective needs to know or be aware of is about how we contribute, whether we are aware of it or not, to what is going on in the collective as a whole. You know, it's not so much about just us living our own individual lives, but as individuals, we contribute to the collective. And so on that note, I will go ahead and wrap up this Oracle Outlook reading for the new year. And so I want to thank you for sharing this space here with me for this reading, and I look forward to sharing the same space with you again in a future reading together. So until then, I'm hoping that you are having a wonderful day, and I'm hoping that your new year is getting off to a great start. Take care.